Welcome to Ending the Stigma, a path to recovery. A mental health and addiction recovery podcast show. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Ending the Stigma, a path to recovery with Scott H Silverman, my friend, the father, the San Diego king, and me, Fred Carroll, the Connecticut guy.
And just the guy, Fred.
Just me. So we've been gone for 2 weeks now. 2 weeks off we took because of the unfortunate.
I think, this would be like, we only missed 2 weeks. So, we're coming back on week 3.
Yeah, we missed 2 weeks. So unfortunately, my ex-wife passed suddenly, unexpectedly. I won't say suddenly. I don't know what the right word to use is, but I'm willing to talk about it to an extent, or to the knowledge that I know. She did have she was young. She was only 50. Of course, I divorced her in 2001. We didn't have there was no animosity. Well, there was animosity, her towards me more than anything. But we weren't on friend basis or anything, but we weren't enemies either. It wasn't anything. We live in the same town, would pass each other every now and then and stuff, but we did have 2 children together, and they lived with me. So she had her demons. And I could tell you these demons rose after the divorce. She wasn't an addict, or an active addict at least, while married to me. So this was her lifestyle she chose after, and she got mixed up with the wrong crowd, and then just slowly deteriorate. It just slowly took place, and supposedly she was getting better, but I know she was on, this is what we do know about it, and then I'll get into the feelings of what it was like. But what we do know is two policemen showed up at my son's old address. And as you know, my son now lives in Utah, but they showed up at his Connecticut address where he lived with his husband. And the people called and said 2 cops just showed up. So then I get the phone call from my son, and we assumed this was his mother having not that it happened a lot, but it wouldn't have shocked us if she tried to use their social security numbers to get credit things, and now my son was in trouble for something, or she used his name. Okay, that's the life she lived. So that's what we assumed, but he called his sister, who had just left with all her girlfriends to go out for the night to watch the basketball championship game. Well, she tried to call her mother. Her mother did not answer. So she, with her anxiety, said, I got to go there. And I begged her not to. I said, enjoy your friends, have fun tonight, don't worry about your mother. And she said, well, it's going to be on my mind all night if I don't. And 5 minutes later, I got the phone call that she had passed, because my daughter pulled up and the cops were already there. And I got there within probably, I live an eighth of a mile away, and I just hopped in my car and drove there and let my daughter go home, and I stayed. So I stayed as long as I could for the coroner and stuff to get there. And that took some time, and that's where I'll get into the story after, how interesting that is, that moment. But what we do know, we don't know the cause, which probably isn't good, because if it was natural causes, they would have told us. So it was unnatural causes. We're waiting on a toxicology report now. We assume it's going to be an accidental overdose is what's going to come back. And the reason we assume that, the Friday before her death, she went to get her, is it methadone? She went to get her methadone, and I guess they do a test on her to give her the methadone, and she tested positive for fentanyl. Okay, and that means she was buying off the street. And it probably had just a dose of fentanyl in it, not a deadly dose, but a dose. And it was in her system, so they couldn't give her methadone. She told my daughter that she wasn't using meth, and it just goes on and on. This is our life for the last 20 years. You know, like you've always said, addicts always have an excuse. You know, it's, oh, I mixed my sleeping pills with this. She did have a lot of sleeping pills and stuff in her room. So it took her life. That's my opinion, of course. We haven't got any proof of that yet, but, you know, it's unnatural for a 50-year-old. But sadly, it's the hardest thing to say, but she wasn't living a good life. Her life was not in a good place. She had very little relationships with her children. She hadn't worked in 8 years. She never got out of bed. Her depression, her anxieties, drug abuse, alcoholism, all these things just kept growing and growing. She was trying to solve problems medically by taking pills and all that stuff, and she just kept mixing. So eventually it deteriorated her. So, but overall, the best thing that came out of this was watching, first of all, my daughter's 21 years old, and the way she stepped up and took care of everything, because I had so few opportunities as an ex-husband to get involved in things that she had to do it all. And there was no end of life plan, no money. So she had to finance the whole thing at 21 years old and make sure her mother was taken care of properly, which I kicked in and agreed with, of course, that she deserved that as a human being. So that was basically it. How's your 2 weeks been?
Come on, Fred. There's probably some more things there. So it's been a couple weeks. How are you feeling?
Well, I explained to people. People are well aware inside my circle of my relationship with her. And most of it came down to her not being a good parent. So, of course, that got me pissed, more often than not, because I had to deal with every problem. I had to be mom and dad and all that stuff. And then she was trash talking me on the other side. But in the moments I was alone, waiting for the coroner, in those moments, it was a unique, something I didn't expect. I didn't expect it to actually bother me, but then you realize, let's not be foolish. I did love this woman at one point in my life. I married this woman one point in my life, even though it was 30 years ago. I don't want to age myself there. It was 1991. I married her. So, and had 2 children with her. That it does bother you a little. It starts to eat at you and get to you a little. But I thought it was more important that my kids learned a lot of lessons, and I'm trying to push those to other people now, privately more than anything, is to make sure their kids never have to go through what my kid went through, which is get your end of life in order. Get it in order. You have to tell people what your wishes are. We had no idea. Obviously we went with a cremation. It's a lot cheaper. We did have a family get together. Well, my kids planned it completely. I was out of that altogether, where they went to the beach and invited all her friends and all the family and everything. And I'll give credit where credit's due. My family stepped up incredibly. For a woman they had no love lost. This wasn't somebody they were close to still, due to the impact on me. But my parents stepped up. They were supportive to my children. They didn't say anything out of line like I would have expected. I was on my best game. There was a few moments, but I always use comedy to balance my emotion anyway. So, and my kids are aware of that, and they find me funny. They still find me funny. It is a little weird that I'm living with my ex-wife again. Those are weird things. She's in my house right now, and it's weird, But Riley's back it looks like my kids recovered pretty quickly from this, which is probably sad and great at the same time. It's sad because they expected this. They've just been waiting when. And I think that's my first time ever dealing with addiction and loss at the same time. But I should say she was a decent human being that just could not get out of her own way. She wasn't hurting anybody but herself and her children, obviously, you know, unknowingly. But she had so many good qualities, and I don't know where she went wrong. And those are things I dealt with more than anything. Was I questioned, and I spoke to my children about this, whether or not I did a good enough job. Did I do enough to help their mother when she was alive? And was I good enough the week of her dying? Was I supportive enough? Because I tried to step away, because I'll tell you, there's vultures out there. I was getting hammered on social media and via people coming back to me of people assuming I was trying to benefit from the loss, being the ex-husband, that I was trying to get money because there is money in an account and all this stuff. And I'll tell you, here's a crazy law. Maybe a lawyer will hear this and doubt and say, wait, there is a better way. But so there's a bank account that her mother has. Now you got to realize that right now she owes me about $68,000 in back child support. And there's a bank account with $3,000 in it. Would have been enough to pay for the burial and stuff. Well, my daughter would have had to go to probate court and get the probate, take over the bank account. The minute she goes to probate and takes over the bank account, she becomes responsible for her mother's bills, which she would then be responsible for paying her own child support. And that's where the laws get crazy. So we just left the money, paid for it on our own, did a GoFundMe, which my kids recouped all their money back and enough money to fly my son home from Utah. And listen, it's over now. Let's assume she's at peace now. And my kids I could already see the difference. I know my daughter might hear this. I don't want to push too much, but she's even at ease. Almost like she doesn't have to worry anymore about her mother. I'm sure that's common. I just don't recognize it prior to this. And I see a difference in Riley, a maturity going through this, realizing the way she treats me. I see a difference. You know, she's very careful to say goodbye, literally goodbye, when she's walking out the door instead of just walking out the door. So it's unfortunate, but... So what do you analyze from that?
Well, you know, grief is a really unique, it's more a journey or path, if you will. And there's things that'll come up over time, a song, a place, a dinner, a conversation, and your kids will feel it. I mean, at some point, you know, I don't really have any analytical feedback for you other than I know that, you know, whenever you lose someone you care about or you've cared about, you know, whenever that loss comes, it's there's nothing quite like it. And everybody processes grief differently. You know, I lost a brother and I lost my folks and my in-laws, and, you know, we were all very close. So, you know, sometimes things come up. I was at a meeting the other day and they were talking about depression over the weekend for some reason, like the planets were aligned in a weird way. And I kind of flashed back on a time when my dad was institutionalized, and I remember going to visit him, and the project of the day was all the patients had to build a birdhouse. So, you know, he was never handy. He never even found his on-off button on his adding machine. So he asked me if I could help him. And I said, yeah, sure, Pops, I'll help you. So I built this like 2-story, really cool birdhouse with a little balcony and everything. And he got first place the next day. So when I came back the next day, he goes, thanks, you got me an extra dessert. I got number 1 on my birdhouse. And I was smiling about that, thinking, you know, that was such a sad time in our lives with him there, but it was such a great moment for me to be able to be a resource for my dad. So, you know, that kind of choked me up and kind of flipped me around a little bit over the weekend as well, just reflecting back. So, you know, it is a tough thing, and you have to really give yourself time, and you have to give yourself permission to feel. And, you know, talking to grievance experts is never a bad thing, just so you can minimize, in my opinion, sometimes the heartfelt loss that takes place. Even, I've got unfortunately a sister I don't talk to, and I can't imagine there'll be a day that, she's a couple years older, but you never know that the sadness will always be there. And I have sadness that we don't communicate. So it's a tough one. It's one of the toughest things I think one has to go through. They say, what is it? Taxes and what's the other thing? Death are two of the tough things. And I'm sorry for your loss and your kids. And, the fact that she wasn't in your life, I don't know. I know you make it sound like it might be easier, but I think over time, when even that aggravation that used to come in your life on a periodic basis, or your kids complaining or being upset about something, or her doing something, there'll be a time where not that you'll miss it, but there'll be this void. And it's that void that takes time to process and kind of fill with other things. And, like you said, you chose each other somehow for some reason. You fell in love. You got married. You had children, and I'm sure you had some. I'm confident you had some great times together. And over time, and sometimes I think love overshadows hate, resentment, anger, fear, all those other things. And so, I pray for you and your family. I know it can't be easy, even though it might feel like, and I'm sure there's a part of you, I think you said it, and your kids, that they're, the level of worry and angst, when that the phone call would come one day. It's funny when you said that, the cops they called, and knowing what I know a little about you and your family, the cops being called usually wouldn't have been something like that. It might have been like somebody broke in the house, an old friend came around and had a gun, and, something strange happened. So that I can't even imagine what that feels like, to get that phone call.
Well, a lot of things there were a few things that don't sit well with me. One is when it's announced. First of all, I let my kids make the announcement on Facebook and stuff like that. I didn't. Yeah. I typed something well after, and I thought I did a good job typing it, wording it properly, just so for respect reasons, more than anything. Not making it about me, making it about her and her life and how she did deserve better. But a lot of the guilt. So there is guilt. First of all, the way a boy and a girl react are night and day. My son, you know how there's the 5 emotions and stuff? I think he went through all 5 in the same night. My phone never stopped ringing. The first, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, and he shouldn't, because I think this is common when you're dealing with a parent like she was. His first reaction was, "I don't care." That was the first words he said when I told him. And he just went about his life. Within the hour, he was crying. The next hour, now we're going into midnight and stuff, he's panicking about how he's going to get home. And then it just snowballed from there. So he went through all 5, and he did make it home. And he was, he's very like me in those senses, where he's going to use comedy to deflect emotion, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily if it works. It's not a horrible thing. It's just not always the truth. It's like saying, yeah, I'm good, I'm okay. But a lot of the guilt on all ends, everybody held a little guilt. And maybe the only guilt I held was always doubting my ex-wife, saying she was struggling. After a while, I got tired of it, and it was like, just get a job. Find a job. I started doubting that she was really dealing with an issue. And that sucks. That sucks that from her end to trust in me to come looking for the help, possibly, if that was her agenda in telling me, and me deflecting it by accusing her of just being lazy or whatever. But I also think that's common. I think those are all common things. I'm just telling the truth of what it felt like in the moment. I didn't cause any of this. Let's put it that way. I actually think she's quite lucky that I stepped up and did the job when she wasn't willing. I think that Ann didn't drive the kids away from her. She still had them if she wanted to see them. 1/8 of a mile, I could hit her house with a rock if I threw it from my yard. she could see her kids anytime she wanted to. Whether she did or not, that's up to her. So I'm proud of that, at least, where, you know, I stepped up and did the job and allowed her still to be in their life.
Yeah, well, that's good. You know, I've been the one in my family. I use humor a lot as well, and I got the title of emotional bodyguard a long time ago. And you know, sometimes I've been to funerals, and I'm the guy that, you know, I can't tell you how many different funerals. When I went to the house afterwards, I ended up being the bartender because everybody else didn't want to, you know, and that's not the best role for me, but people like to drink at funerals. And you know, it gave me a chance to say hi to everybody, which is what I used to do when I used to bartend at parties. Was I'd get a chance to talk to everybody. So, you know, it gives me joy to know that you guys are processing and talking to each other, because you know, the walls that come up sometimes are you know, hard to climb, but give yourself time. There's no rush. I mean, you should take whatever time you need. I remember Michelle and I, my wife and I, got in a fight once because she said to me, you know, what did she say? She said something about you don't have to keep grieving over the loss of your mom, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. And I go, are you trying to tell me how to grieve now? You know, as my spouse and best friend, you know, shut the F up. It's like, are you crazy? You know, and sometimes you have those days. You know, she's the one, every single anniversary of someone in her family's death, she goes to the cemetery and visits everybody. And I don't like going. I'm not comfortable there. So she represents. So, you know, you'll find your way with all of this, and, you know, hopefully good things will come. And, you know, look, like you said, your wife your ex-wife is at peace. You know, the suffering that she was going through, and it sounds like it was pretty severe, no longer is an active activity. So I think that's a blessing.
It is. And the kids weren't, I mean, even myself, another thing drives me crazy is all her friends coming out of the woodwork suddenly with, oh, she was such a nice girl, she's going to be where were any of these people when she was alive? And that's another fact that, you know, people have to start taking care of saying things when you're alive rather than it's so easy to say she was a great person after they're dead, you know. And Riley got very overwhelmed and tired of people. And I explained to her, well, I'll tell you how I explained it, but she got tired of hearing, I'm here for you, sorry for your loss, you know, all that. It's thousands of people that say it to you. And I gently explained to her that your friends don't know what to do either. But if they're at least offering words of encouragement like that, they're decent friends. They just don't know. They don't know what you need to hear. So they're saying what everybody says. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I said, you could always run a nice test and say your car payment's due. They said they'd do anything for you. You know, see if you can get that car insurance paid off.
Them on their offer, yeah, we'll accept that offer. And here's a list of terms that it would meet my needs. That's right. You know, I had an uncle I lost last year. He was my mom's younger brother, and he was a creative guy. He's one of those guys that he invented this toilet paper holder for gas stations, you know, because, you know, most gas stations you go in, the toilet paper is always gone. This was like, I don't know, 50 years ago. And he tried to sell it to Chevron and Shell, and it holds like 14 rolls of toilet paper, so that you save on labor. And he came up with this idea about doing, he used to call me all and say, hey, I got another one. Okay. Anyway, I love listening to him because he was very creative. He came up with this idea that I really liked. He goes, I think people should make videotapes about how they actually feel about members of their family and their close colleagues and the people that they're bitter about or people that may have hurt them. And he said, and when you die, you know, you pay a service, they film everything. And then, you know, part of the fee is they send these videotapes to all these people, you know, once you're in heaven, and they all get a chance to really get a sense of how that person felt about them and what hand they were dealt by their relationship. Yeah, and I thought of you as you're talking, because I thought that, you know, you're always coming up with great ideas. That would be a great one. Send an MPEG to somebody, you know, just going, you know, this, by the way we saw you, I know you'd be coming to my funeral, and here's the 12 things that I really wanted you to know. And I was uncomfortable telling you while I was on the planet. Now, since I'm gone, please sit down pour yourself whatever or have some pancakes and listen to everything because it's heartfelt and it's real and you really need to know.
Right. Well, that was one of the things, of course I use comedy in it again. My kids asked me how I dealt with sitting around with lack of a better word, with the body waiting for the coroner. And I said, honestly, it was the first time I was able to talk to your mother without her opinion. Yeah. So it did give you some relief in those moments, but it went by quick. Listen, what a racket this death is with money. Boy, these funeral homes, they might pretend they care or show they care, but boy, they're racketing the cash. People are it is expensive.
We had 4 of those situations in a 5-year period. And, we had the mortuary and the cemetery and the rabbi, we had them all in auto dial. And, they'd get a call and go, oh my God. And I'd see them all at these funerals and they're like, geez, Scott, how are you guys holding up? I said, some days we are and some days we're not. But it's weird because we knew the routine and we knew the prices. And my mom's the kind of person that she actually, she always thought ahead. So she got grave sites for all of us, all the kids. And as we got married, she got more sites. And, one day I remember she said, if you guys aren't going to plan for your future, I'm going to sell the plots. And I said, well, why would you do that? She says, well, the kids aren't coming to visit. I said, Mom, for God's sakes, and she was one of those people who used to count the days that we didn't come see her. And, my youngest is in New York now and she's starting to do that. I said, you sound like your grandmother now, taking an inventory, how many days I haven't, you've only been there 3 months and you finally settled in a month ago. When are you and Mom coming to visit? I said, look, I'll fly you out here anytime you want. I don't want to get on a plane. I really don't want to be in New York, but we're going to go see her, soon at some point. And then somehow she was at an event at the Hamptons over the weekend with her company. She saw Alec Baldwin and a few other people, and she met a local cop. And I didn't realize this, that I know the Hamptons is busy, but he said they have 25,000 people that live there 9 months of the year. And during the summer, there's over 300,000. So, it's, I guess, a very unique place. It's kind of, one of those places people go to. But when you hear these stories and, so you hug your kids and then, like your daughter's saying goodbye. You may at some point start kissing her and hugging her before she leaves. And then she's really going to think you're loaded.
Yeah. Well, that's why she actually picked a fight with me the other night about, what was it about? Eating the food in the refrigerator that's hers, okay? And she's really digging in. She's hammering me over like a yogurt or something really simple.
Yep.
Like and I said, listen, I'm about to go to bed. Have you not learned anything from last week? Are these the last words you really want to say to me about your banana yogurt? And she shot back. She said, oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
Over a yogurt.
And when you're at different ages and stages in your life, things feel different. You process differently because you've got a little more experience. Even though you're looking at the same thing, you may feel like, well, that's not necessarily how I see it. But then, hopefully as you get older, you're more sensitive to it, but there's a period of time, that my folks, their friends they had a huge sphere of influence, and God, there was like a funeral almost every week for years. It felt like that we were going to, because of, they were aging out and it's just like, it's a weird space to be in. There's no doubt about it. And I see people die all the time. I go to funerals all the time with people that are, overdosing, and I've known in the program and recovery, but it doesn't matter. Each time it is what it is. And no two are alike. And it's hard to empathize with other people when they're going through it. I got a couple people in my home group. One guy is, heavily on cancer treatment now, and he has no idea how long he's going to live. And 2 weeks ago, he was like, I have maybe 2 months. And yesterday he's like, well, this new medicine is really working well. They tell me I could go to the end of summer now. And he's such great spirits about it. So everyone deals with it differently.
Yeah. Oh, I get that's that's the lifelong question. Do you want to know? Would you like to know when? And I don't think you would. I don't think overall you want to. But I'm happy that even the kids and myself, there's no ill wills held in. I'm not worried about the girl she was anymore and what she did to us and how she could have done better. It's over now. There's nothing you could do to change any of that. The money was never a factor. So much so that all we were trying to do was get her back on her feet. The offer was on the table that part of her problem was she knew if she went and got her $15 an hour job, they were going to take half of it and give it to me, who doesn't need the money. And I cut a deal with my daughter and said, I will give it right back to her. All she has to do is satisfy the state at this point, with the arrangement. I was willing to give all the money back to her. I gave her stimulus when they gave it to me, all that stuff. So I didn't hold horrible ill will, but she took offense to that. And that might have been on me because I might have made it too much of a point to hold it over her head that I'm the good guy. Look what I'm doing for you, instead of just doing it. I had to announce it and rub her face in it, possibly, to make myself feel good.
Well, Fred, since this is a shared show, I got a couple of things to share before our time is up today.
Yeah, go ahead.
And knock it off, guys. Anyway, so Marjorie Taylor Greene. Mm-hmm. So she's in court the other day testifying, right? And she says they counted over 50 times. And this isn't a political statement. It doesn't matter who it be, that she doesn't remember 50 times, doesn't remember. And somebody who sits in that kind of office, they retain a lot of different things almost all the time. And when you run for a political position to get elected, you have to be pretty smart, or, because you can't fool everybody.
Right.
And it was just amazing. And then the next day I heard a recap of that testimony, just a summary. And then it turns out that the judge who's hearing the case is up for re-election. So he's going to be very careful. They inferred that he wants to take the right position because he wants to get reelected. And I am just so pissed off at all these leaders, and then McCarthy and Meadows and these tapes that are coming out. And I don't care what political party you belong to. If you say today one thing and then tomorrow you say another, and then a tape comes out and then, and you deny that you said it and your voice is on it, how do people do that? I mean, that's got to be a level of sociopathic behavior. I mean, how do people do that? And how do they stay where they're at? It's almost like they're not only above the law, but they feel insulated, and then Musk today is going to buy Twitter, and there's fear that he's going to get Trump back on Twitter and he'll use Twitter to influence the world. I am just so frustrated.
Well, he will let Trump back on, and that's fine. It's his company, and he paid a lot of money for it. It doesn't matter. Sometimes maybe letting him back on is the secret to him not getting elected. Listen, we might have made the guy look too good by taking him away from there. Maybe you want him to have that freedom, to say things that are.
He was quoted today saying that he's not going to go back on Twitter, but the on-air personality said, Trump. It's like, each day it changes. I mean, if you and I were to say one thing, and then the next day do something else, and people caught it, I don't think people would have respect for us. And I don't understand, and maybe it's just my naivete, how some of these people continue to maintain their power base and their level of influence at that level when the facts, and now that, I don't know, people argue what facts are, but when there's a recording of you saying, I'm going to do this and you do that, and then someone says, well, you said this, but you did that. But no, that's not what I said, or that's what I said with the information I had at the time. It just, I don't understand it. And for me to even give it power, it bothers me because that gives me angst. And then I'm the one who's suffering from the angst.
Well, and we're going to continue to suffer because this is from my opinion, I don't know about yours, but Biden's not doing much better himself with his numbers and his choices. And I think we need some youth movement here in presidency. I'd like to see somebody that's not in their 70s. at this point. Is that ageism?
No,
Did I just commit ageism?
I think of myself as a body language expert, and I watch Biden move. I'm worried about him. He is, I don't know, his gait slowed down. He seems to, obviously he rehearses. I hope he does. But even then, it's hard to tell. And, obviously his approval ratings, inflation's going up. I think it was New York. The new mayor was on 60 Minutes the other night, and he was saying how 40% of the businesses haven't even reopened yet in New York. And, crime is up, violence is up. And it's interesting times that we're in right now. And I'm not sure, do you hunker down? Do you go out and do more? So I'm a little torn right now because no, I don't disagree. And I think having young blood in there would be awesome. But if people can't talk to each other and come to some sort of senses, how are we going to move the agenda, whatever that's defined as, forward?
Yeah, it's a joke. All of politics has become a joke. It's so financially motivated, and me and you just don't fall into they really just don't care about us. It's on both sides. Nobody's really there.
Is it money or is it power or is it both?
It's probably a little bit of both. I think one feeds the other, and it just gets worse. It just multiplies as you go. There's a reason they want to be in office. There's money to be made somewhere. Even off their $40,000-$50,000 salary, they're making millions. They have
and most of them, and everybody on the news who's in front of them, doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're all writing books, and I'm sure they're making book deals. And I was so apolitical for so long running a charity that I don't want to try to catch up because I think it's like a moving target today, and the way it shifts is really, really scary. And, if you watch CNN, you see the same story. I swear CNN was actually created for Alzheimer's patients because they run the news every 15 minutes in their news cycle.
Same thing.
And everything is breaking news now, and then
it's all
and then
breaking news.
Breaking news. And we, just today in San Diego, 14th day of gas prices going down. Well, it's going down a penny a day. That's 14 cents. I mean, it's like, went up to $6. So how long is it going to take to get back to $3.25, here in California? And it just,
we're at $3.49 today.
I think we're at $5.80 I paid the other day per gallon.
You got the weather though. So you got to make a choice. Do you want the weather or you want the gas?
Yeah, I'm not really complaining about it. I'm complaining about it, but there's nothing I can really do about it. But what concerns me is the level of acceptance I think these power brokers anticipate people making. And then when you mentioned, before we started about teenage suicide and, overdose rates are up, alcoholism is up, domestic violence is up, violent crime is up, and it's like as a society, we don't seem to have coping skills. And, when I hear families say, I can't see my therapist, they can't get me in for 3 months. What do I do? Then I talked to a family today, that lady's talking about her son. And she said, I think he really wants to get into treatment now. He's really ready. And so I said, well, that was her voicemail. I called back. He answers the phone. He's 52. And they're driving around looking for his van, which he lost over the weekend somewhere near the beach. And then he says, and I'll call you back as soon as I find my van.
Yeah.
And this is a mom calling about her son, 7:30 this morning, apologizing about calling early. I saw you on the news. I kept your number. What do I do? And when I called back, he answered and he goes, can we call you later? I'm looking for my van. I'm thinking, oh my God. And when she's talking about her son, you and I are talking about our kids. This guy's 52 years old.
Yeah, so she's in her 70s, and she's still paying. She's suffering greatly. Her whole life is dedicated to this kid, which I get to a point. But eventually, these kids got to get out of their way. But before we do go, I did have a moment. Last Monday, I went to Boston for Patriots Day, which is, for people that don't know what Patriots Day is, that's the Boston Marathon, the day they run the Boston Marathon. So I went into Boston to see the Red Sox play. They play at 11 a.m. in the morning. It's the only morning game in Major League Baseball. They start at 11 because they want all the fans to be in the stadium when the runners come by. And then when the game's over, we could go right to the finish line and watch, not the pros, watch the firemen, the moms, and stuff like that finish and root them on. It's a lot of fun. And it was nice to see after the tragedy that happened at the Boston Marathon several years ago. It was a really nice day. It's really a true holiday now, similar to how 9/11 should be moving forward. But I was in a bar, Scott, drinking alcohol at 8:30 a.m., surrounded by thousands and thousands of college students.
Well, you and Johnny Depp, when he was questioned under oath and said, what was that happy hour? And what did he say? Something along the line of, is there an hour of the day that can't be happy hour? Something to that effect.
Yeah.
Watching those two and their testimony, and it is just unbelievable. And this thing's been going on since 2016, I guess.
He's an actor. He's an actor. Listen, I'm not. If I have to, I'm a 50-50 split at this point. But I'm leaning towards the Johnny Depp side right now. I think she's really not a good person, but I don't think he's much better in the sense of, there's enough videotape out there of his violent acts, and we know how a man could scare a woman much easier than the opposite, with his physicality and anger. He definitely has anger issues. First of all, where'd the English accent come from? He's not from England. He's American. Where do you just all of a sudden, him and Madonna, where do you suddenly come up with an English accent? It doesn't just happen. And what I heard was, they didn't want cameras in the courtroom. He requested cameras in the courtroom. He's putting on a show. That's what he's doing on that stand, putting on a show. And he's going to win to a point, but I don't see him. He's not who he used to be, and people are going to be just as mad at him.
Well, he discloses what he consumes over the years, and nobody stays the same when you're taking that level of toxicity into your body over time. It does things to your brain cells. It does things to your body parts, and who knows? It's just, that's what I'm saying. And maybe just because it's on the news and it's being talked about on social media, and it's become such an influential platform, and you can't keep up with all of it. And why would you want to? I mean, I'm just a study of human nature, so I kind of like to know, but I'm at a point now where my own personal capacity to process is really getting to a point where I have to set some new boundaries.
Well,
and
actually,
I'm working on that.
That brings me full circle back to you talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she can say these things when it's proven this way and stuff. And this is exactly why. Because the news cycle all she has to do is say, I don't remember, for 2 days, and then it's forgotten. It's on to the next thing. Someone will always come around and trump you, if that's a proper way to use the word. But it's forgotten. You remember because it's on your mind right now, but everybody else has already forgotten, and she's on to her next stupid comment.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what the news cycle is. The news hasn't been the news.
So we'll be talking about Sarah Palin moving her position up in the election process. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's all.
And watching some of these tapes that are coming out from that book, it'll be interesting. It seems like there's some real deep dives going on right now in Washington, D.C. And then you wonder, with all this conversations going on, who's helping manage the country? And of course, the sadness of Ukraine continues to, embrace all of us or roll over us. You can't ignore it. And it's a shame. And was it 5 million people have already left? And it's scary, and some people think of that as diversion therapy for domestic issues, anyway, but that's enough for today. I'm going to need a nap after.
Me too. But so this is ending the Stigma, Path to Recovery. That is Scott H Silverman. I am Fred Carroll. You could listen to Scott on his Happy Hour podcast. You can find that on Apple and everything, everywhere else. I'm in hiatus with my podcast right now, but it is Apostrophes to Writers series. You could still find it for old episodes, and I am moving back into it soon, and that's going to be it. So, as Scott, you want to give your phone number real quick?
Yeah, before I do, I want to thank you, Fred, for sharing today. I appreciate it. Really, I know it's going to impact others as well. So you can call or text me anytime. And I'm finding that people are doing that, kind of the tweakers in the middle of the night. That's okay. I'll talk to you in the morning when I wake up. But call me 619-993-2738. 619-993-2738. Or Google me, Scott H Silverman, and let's talk.
Yep. And they could also go to your website. What's your website again?
yourcrisiscoach.com.
YOURCRISIS coach.com. Yourcrisiscoach.com. Okay. And if no one has told you they love you today, we love you. We are Scott H Silverman and Fred Carroll for Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.
Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery is produced by Venom Studios. Copyright 2022 by Venom Podcast Studios. The show is hosted by life coach and author Scott H Silverman and author Fred Carroll. Our intention is to reduce all stigmas and to provide information that isn't discussed enough. If you or someone you know has an issue, please contact your local authorities or substance abuse counseling centers for help. The suicide hotline could be reached by dialing 1-800-273-8255 or simply text the word HOME to 741-741 for free 24/7 counseling. Scott H. Silverman's information could be found by visiting his website at yourcrisiscoach.com. And to learn more about author Fred Carroll, please visit www.venomstudios.com. That's studios with a Z. And remember, if no one has told you they love you today, we love you. This has been Ending the Stigma.